Hi, welcome back. This is the second video about the settings in Excel, and we're going to be looking today at another kind of series of options within the general options of Excel. And perhaps before we start, I need to remind you that these options really are Office options rather than specifically Excel options, and you'll see why I'm making this comment when we get into the options, into the settings themselves. But it's worth saying now that some of them aren't really that relevant to spreadsheets. They might apply to Word or to one of the other Office applications rather than Excel. But we'll see. We'll see what happens when we look at them. So let's get into the spreadsheet. So here we are once again at our blank spreadsheet, and we're going to look some more at the options. So I'll go the standard work route. So that's files and then options, brings me up the option, and we're going to look. Now I'm going to ignore formulas because we're going to deal with the whole issue of formulas on a separate and more focused session or series of sessions. So we'll move on to proofing. And this, in a way, right from the word go, you can understand why I made the comment about the fact that it's an Office settings rather than specifically Excel, because proofing fundamentally is about the word processor or other apps that do a lot more text work. So some of these either don't work or don't work much in Excel, but let's have a look at them. And the first thing we'll do is have a look at these autocorrect options, which is probably the bulk of what we want to talk about. Because when you click on the autocorrect options, you get yet another dialog. These are known as dialogues, these little mini windows. And you can see that there's quite a lot of options here for us to work through. So there's a lot of work to do. The first option, in fact, is obviously an overall option, show the autocorrect options button. And I have to say that I have checked it and unchecked it and tried all sorts. I have done Google searches and I have been unable to find what on earth this refers to. Now, it may be that it's more a Word thing than an Excel thing. It actually tells me that when I make changes there ought to be an option which allows me to undo them, but I have found no evidence of that button whatsoever. So as far as I can see, it just doesn't work. Now, if I'm wrong, I apologise, but I couldn't get it to work. But it doesn't mean that the other bits don't work. So we'll carry on, we'll leave it checked. So the first thing to look at is this correct to initial capitals. And it makes it fairly clear kind of what this is meant to be about. So let's have a look at how this actually works with it checked. And by default, I think the settings that I have are pretty much the default that you get. So let's cancel our way out of there and we'll put something down here. And basically the idea is that if you type something, you know, sometimes you hold down the Shift key, you type something and you leave the Shift key down too much and then you carry on. Okay, so you've got these two capitals rather than one. And as soon as you hit the space, it should revise the words so that it's in its normal format, if you like. Now that will work in general. There are a few examples of where it doesn't, and in particular words that basically should remain capitalized. So if I'm writing about more than one PC, I might have 3 PCs, it stays capitals, which is quite clever. However, if I do something like that, it does change it. So it does kind of know, and in fact I'm going to show you how you can configure that. Suppose you work somewhere where you do get lots of EXs and they're capitals and you want the capital X to stay, we can configure it to stay there. But the first things first, if you actually want for some reason to avoid this readjustment, then obviously you would go up, you would go into proofing, autocorrect options, and you would disable that correction of 2 initial letters. So if I now type this GREAT and hit space, it doesn't correct. I can't actually imagine why you would want to leave that as it is, unless it's because you've got lots of EXs. So let's have another look at that, and we'll go back in, go back to proofing. There's obviously a lot of fuffing around here. It's not something you want to be doing all the time. And have a look at the exceptions. And notice the initial caps, and notice that by default it actually only has IDS. So why PCs work, I don't know. Now I haven't tested this, so let's assume. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to add EXS. So you work in a business where you get lots of EXs. You want them to be left in capital. We'll put that back so it does correct the initial capitals, but I've put an exception of EXs in. So hopefully when I type great, G-R-E-A-T, it will work. But if I type EXS and space, it leaves it as it is, unlike when I did it before, because I put that in as an exception. So it's worth fiddling around with that for tasks that you might often leave as 2 characters. It's usually the 2 capital characters. There might be special terms. You might have a logo or something that has the first two letters in capitals. I can think of 1 or 2 examples that we've had in the past, although they don't come to mind straight away. So that's correcting the 2 initial capitals. Now we also have an option here. Let's go in again, and in fact I want to put it back. I don't want EXs, so we'll go here, we'll go to the exception, go to the initial caps, we'll go to EXs, and I'll get rid of it. Right, so we've only got IDs, so now EXs, capital EX with a small s, should readjust. Now notice the next option is to capitalize first letters of a sentence. Now this certainly does work in Word, but if I type this is a sentence, you would expect it when I enter it or something to capitalize the letter T in this, and it doesn't do it. As far as I can see, it doesn't work. So don't even try it. It's just useless. Okay. The next example is to correct the accidental use of caps lock. So why you should do it, sometimes it's because you're doing a shift. So suppose I went to Spain, but instead of hitting the shift, I've hit the caps lock, so Spain. Oh, I realised that last year. Okay, oh, and I still haven't corrected it. So I went to Spain last year. Now notice that it hasn't corrected that, although in fact, according to the autocorrect, it should have. Correct accidental use of caps lock key. Now this may be down to the algorithm that identifies it's a caps lock key, and for some reason it thinks it's not, but even when I've done it with only the first 3 or 4 letters in caps lock, it hasn't worked. Now there is actually a way, I'm not sure if it will work with this, I haven't tested this specific sentence, but you can go up to review up here and spelling. Notice that I've selected that sentence, so I go to spelling, and oh well, it's not letting me do it, and I don't know why. Let's do that again. Do you want to continue checking at the beginning of the sheet? Yeah. Spell check complete, you're good to go. So it hasn't recognized it. If, on the other hand, I change this to a lowercase, and I can do it manually using the case option. Does exist somewhere. Maybe it doesn't there. Okay, I thought it did. So let's do last year in lowercase. It may accept Spain as a capital word. So let's try the spelling now. Review, spelling, review, spelling, and for some reason it's not even giving me the no, it thinks that that's okay. If I try this, okay, I can only say that when I did this, the spelling actually did work. So sometimes, yeah, here. So clearly the algorithm works in certain contexts and doesn't work in others. And this one, it allows me to change it to Spain. So I can change that. And we've changed it to Spain, the proper spelling. So sometimes using the spelling will actually correct your sentences. If you're doing a lot of text within the spreadsheet, it's worth running it through the spelling. But the automated spelling mechanism doesn't work. So it doesn't work in capitalizing the first letter of sentences. And in fact, I've tried checking the uncapitalized sentence using spelling, and that doesn't work either. So you are pretty much on your own. So that's that option. So we've looked at capitalizing. The name of days, however, does work. So if I do January and then space, I say it works. It worked for me once. Let's have a look at the options that we've got here. Maybe I've unchecked it without realizing. Capitalize the names of days. Oh, sorry, so this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, not months. That's my fault. Okay, so cancel that. So if I do Monday, it changes it to Monday. That was my fault. It would be good to do it with months as well, but there you go. And you can disable that. Not sure why you would want to. Notice also that we have, more importantly, we have an option here which is replace as you go. And you can remove that. Do you know, I haven't actually tested this and I'm not quite sure what the effect would be. So clearly, if I do Monday here, it's still working. So I guess it's partly with errors. Let's come back and have a look at that one. I'm not entirely sure. It should stop it from working altogether. It should mean that you control your spelling rather than the thing. But as you can see, it doesn't work. A lot of these are a little bit iffy. Okay, so we go here, replace the text as you type. This may relate, yeah, this relates specifically to this. I apologize. This relates specifically to this whole area here. So if I've actually disabled that, well, let's look at it enabled, and then I'll show you it disabled. Okay, so this basically allows you to have all sorts of corrections, like very typical spelling errors. Okay. You can also put in things that you find as well. Yeah, we can have a look at this. So let's leave it as it is. Replace that. Leave it as it is. One of the obvious things that it works with is this bracket C close bracket. When I press the space, it does the correction, and it's failed to do it. Okay, isn't that great? Loads of testing and it still doesn't do it. Let's have a look at what we've got set up here. Maybe it hasn't accepted. Okay, so it's still not working. So I didn't okay that, I must have cancelled. So let's okay that and okay that. So hopefully it's working now. So we've already seen what happens when it's not working. So if I do that, put the bracket C bracket, and as soon as I'm space, it actually activates the change. So we've actually seen the difference. When I turned that off, it simply accepted whatever I typed. The same is true with errors. He was, and then as soon as I hit the space, it's actually added the space. Now that's because he was is one of the errors that's in here and recognized. So if I come down, in fact I can type it in, there it is, he was. So when it sees he was, it puts a space, the same with he said. Okay, so that means you can add things there. Now one of the things I thought I'd show you was because you can also add various symbols, and you can see there's quite a lot of symbols here. One of the symbols they haven't done is that. And it would be quite useful to have a double less than, perhaps, or a double greater than. You can use it in a variety of ways. For me, it's just an example. Now here, because I have no simple way of inserting that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Windows tool that's available, and that's in fact the character map. Now, you'll need to search for this within your Windows, but if I bring it over onto the screen's area, you can actually see it. This is a character map. It's available in Windows Tools, I think it is. Now you can actually hunt for this, and you'll see there's this little symbol here, which is the double less than sign. So I'm going to select that, which puts it in here, and then I'm going to copy it. Move that out of the way. I'm done with that. But in fact, in the replace with, I'll do a paste, okay, which is a Control V in this case, and it will actually put that symbol in there. So remember, when you've copied it, you need Control V to paste it, and I can add that in here, and it's now in the list. So if I OK that, make sure I've OK'd the replace text as you type, yeah. So OK that and OK that. If I now come down here and I type less than, as soon as I hit the space, it actually adds my symbol. Now, I've chosen one particular symbol. You can add pretty much anything that you think is useful. So, for example, in Word, I do a control X prime and then E, and it will give me an E acute, E with an accent. Now I have no easy way of doing that in Excel. Maybe they are in here and I haven't researched this. So let's bring the character map back, and let's go into the commands again. Here we go, and let's check. No, well, in fact, you can actually see that they are here. So they do it with bracket E slash, and it gives you an E acute accent, and then slash the other way gives you an E grave accent. So they've already done it, and I didn't know that. So if I come out here, if I type in bracket E slash L, as soon as I've typed that extra character, it knows it. Bracket E slash the other way, V, E, and I've spelt the French word élève. Okay, So that can be useful. Okay, so that's all the different exceptions. Let me actually remove this chevron thing just to show you how you would do that. So I'll go back in here and more commands, proofing, autocorrect. I go in and press the less than again, which takes me down to this line. I want to remove it, so I simply delete it. And it's gone. So if I now do the less than, it leaves it where it is. Okay, so that's the first tab. So we spent all our time just looking at this first tab. If we then go into the menus again, the options, proofing, auto correction, the auto format as you type is the next we've done. So we've done all of these. We've looked at all the options here. We've even looked at the exceptions. Let's do the auto format as you type. Internet and network paths with hyperlinks. Okay, so I'll come out of here. If I simply type in www.xyz.com and hit enter, it automatically creates that as a link that I could follow. I'm sure there is a website, XYZ, somewhere. Now I can actually stop it from creating these hyperlinks simply by going into the option, proofing, auto correction, auto format as you type, get rid of the internet and network path. Okay, so I've okayed all that. So if I do it again, www.xyz.com and hit enter, it doesn't create a URL out of that. So again, if you're doing lots of typing and you don't have URLs and you're actually having to type them, that might be quite a good way of saving you some time. Let's put it back. Also, because I do want to show you something else, so we'll put that back and okay. Having said that, if I type it in, if I do it as usual, xyz.com and enter, a simple Control Z or undo, we can even do it up here on the undo here so you can see me do it, but Control Z if you're on the keyboard, and it's gone. The first thing it does is just remove the URL creation. So if you like, the enter and the URL creation are two separate steps. And so by doing an undo, you only undo one of those steps. If I do an undo again, it will actually remove the typing. So how much value you get out of changing that option is debatable. It takes one additional keystroke, Control Z, or one additional mouse movement to undo. Okay, so that was the basically either creating or not creating the hyperlink. Let's look at the next option here, and we'll get rid of this again. Let's clear that lot. Okay, let's now look at the next option. You know, I am really going through these at quite a reasonable pace, but we don't want to spend ages on them. And the next one is apply as you work, include new rows and columns in table. Now this one I debated whether we do it or not, because tables are going to be a particular feature that we will look at later, but it's simple enough, so let's do it. So in order to do that, let me create first of all a simple table. So Jan, Feb, and I'm going to autofill these. We've done this before, so you've seen that. So I've just scanned down, created that, and I'm going to put a value in here. It's going to get to 200 the next month, and I can now, I think, autofill that as well. So you can see it's going up by 100 each month. So I've just created a simple table. Now, I'm not actually bothered what goes on here. It was really just to create a simple piece of information, but I want to turn that into a table. And in Excel, tables are an object in their own right. So I'm going to select the area I'm talking about. I'm going to go into insert and I'm going to insert a table. All right, it's checking the area that I want the table to be, so I could revise it at this point. Checking whether my table has headers, we'll be looking at that later, but I'm going to OK that. So here we are, here's our table. Now the option was that it will include new rows and new columns. So if I come down here and I hit enter, and now initially it will take me to the next cell down, but I want to start here. So I'm going to imagine I'm in the new year, so I'm going to type in January again. Now notice as soon as I've entered that data and get into the column 2, it's added that row. And you can tell that it's still part of the table because each alternate row is blue and white. So if I make that 500, enter, and now it will give me, go into the right position in the table. So March is going to be 700. May is going to be 1200, whatever, it's just data. Okay, so the option that we've got automatically increases the table, and the table can be quite a useful thing. Now if we go into this option up here, check the proofing, auto correction, I can actually remove that option. So if I'd entered the table, when I entered it would just come out of the table and finish. You can decide which of those you want, whether that, it seems to me that I do it so little that it's not important, but if I were to use tables, then that would be useful. Okay. I'm not going to deal with the fill formulae because we'll deal with that as part of the whole section that we look at on formulae. So, having talked about that, the next thing to look at is actions, and I found that this was of no use whatsoever, so I'm going to ignore actions completely. And when I look at more actions, it basically tells you there aren't any, so no point. Okay, math autocorrect does look more useful, and you can see there's quite a lot. If you're into maths, there's quite a lot of useful symbols here. You've got all sorts here. Okay. But it's only going to be useful if you are doing some quite sophisticated maths on the whole. Oh look, they do have the symbol that I've created, so it is there if I knew how to do it. Okay, and if you're in maths, it's worth actually having a look at these, even memorizing the ones that you use a lot. There is so much there, it's difficult to know what you would remember. Okay. But I'm not going to go into those now because again it is pretty specialist. So we've covered that autocorrect options as much as we're going to be able to. So all that leaves us with now is looking at these additional options. We've got a few that might be useful here. The first is ignore words in uppercase. Now, I interpret that as saying that what we've just been talking about works, but if the whole word is in uppercase, it will ignore that. Well, that's possible. If I OK this and I type in Excel. Now remember, one of the rules is that if the first two letters are capitals, it will minimize everything except the first letter. So the danger is that that will convert that to uppercase E and all the rest lowercase, but it doesn't. So maybe that's working. What I haven't done is try it like that with one lowercase. It doesn't correct that either. It's only if it's two capitals. So I don't really know what that option is giving us. And certainly if I go and remove that option, nothing changes. So if I change that and get rid of ignore words in uppercase, okay, and I type in Excel, it still leaves it there. So what that option gives me, I really don't know. It hasn't changed a thing. So that's the first issue. It doesn't make a difference. Okay. I also found that unchecking the second option there, ignore words that contain numbers, I found that that didn't make a difference either. I found the third one, ignore internet and file address, didn't make a difference either. But I did find and I also found that flagging repeated words didn't make a difference. So let's go for that one, because that one, it seems to me, is more important. So if I get rid of this, so he is a good friend. Well, for some reason it's taken me into don't know why it's made a URL out of that, but you'll notice that it hasn't picked up. Well, it's doing that and it's giving me blue. I don't know why it's done that. Let's go somewhere else. I wish it was better, and it hasn't identified that we've got two words there. Now, in fact, if I go into that spelling that we did earlier, it does. And if I ignore once, is that the right option? It's found is. No, that was the wrong option. So let's do that again. Let's spell, gets wish, and I delete. Okay, we won't go any further. But notice it's left two spaces. So, but still, it sort of works. So it kind of works when you do spell checking, but it doesn't work as part of the autocorrection. So this autocorrection is very hit and miss, it seems to me, and it looks like it's been designed more for Word than it has been for Excel. Let's just finish off the last bit. There's a few more comments that need to be made, but we're almost there. So it doesn't flag repeating words despite the fact that it's ticked. Doesn't ignore internet and file addresses despite the fact it's ticked. Doesn't ignore words that contain numbers despite the word it's ticked, and it doesn't ignore uppercase despite the word it's ticked, or should I say it always ignores uppercase. Not sure what enforced accented uppercase in French would mean for us, but it's not really relevant. Suggest from main dictionary only is a bit specific. If I click on the custom dictionaries, you'll see all the dictionaries that are in play. Interestingly enough, I've actually told it I don't want United States English, and it's still kept it there. But in the end, I've left it because sometimes you do get, if I'm pulling in a document from somewhere else, it'll have American spelling. So I thought I'd leave that. But if you want to make sure that it highlights American spelling as an error, then you need to uncheck that one. French is because I've got French and Spanish activated. But English is my default. Not sure where these are. This roaming thing seems to be stuff from me. So when I do edit the word list, it's all stuff it's picked up from my own use. And custom dic, I think, means that you can add, there's nothing in it, but you could add words. You can specifically add words. If you put it in the right place and you call it custom.dic, I should have researched this. Then it will actually use those words as part of the dictionary as well. So it's another way of you putting in words that it should recognize. Okay. If you select suggest from main dictionary only, I assume it would be the default dictionary. So that would be one way I could make sure it doesn't accept United States spelling. But the trouble is I would lose the French spelling as well. Okay. Now, obviously, I then get options about French and Spanish, and even can change my dictionary language here. But generally, you're not going to be changing those. So that's the proofing. We'll look at some of the other options in yet another video. So let's cancel that, and I'll see you in the next video.